Hi, I'm Nish, and in this video I'm going to be making a dark fantasy castle inspired by 80s animation. This is by far the biggest project I've ever done on this channel, and it's gonna be awesome. Welcome to GOBLINs! If this is your first time in GOBLINs, welcome! GOBLINs is my world building project where I am crafting an entire world centered around goblins. I got a comment recently saying I should build a goblin castle, and that idea has haunted me ever since. A lot of my favorite crafters and YouTubers have made their own castle, usually in that classic medieval fantasy style, but I want to do things a little bit different. I am going to be making a twisted, evil castle like you would see in 70s and 80s animation. We're talking Sleeping Beauty, the Black Cauldron, Sword in the Stone, the Last Unicorn. You know what I'm talking about. I want to try and capture that hand-drawn animation feel. In some of the movies I referenced, the castles look almost melty, so instead of building this castle brick by brick with foam, I'm going to try sculpting the entire thing with air-dry clay and epoxy. I have no idea how this is gonna go. I've never seen anyone make terrain like this before, maybe for a good reason, I don't know. But to capture the warmth and whimsy of hand-drawn animation, I think hand sculpting is the best way to achieve that. But on top of that very specific aesthetic and feel, I also want this terrain to be extremely playable. I will mostly be using this for D&D, but I can also see it being a really awesome centerpiece for a Mordheim board. I'm already envisioning a couple scenarios that this board could be used for. The first being you have to be the first ones to get to the tallest tower, the second being you have to try and defend this very indefensible castle, and the third being a map that you could use for a battle royale. I'm picturing the temple from Super Smash Bros, but in 3D. I've been thinking about this project for months, doing sketches and collecting images, and the only reason I hadn't started yet was because I knew it would be a multi-video part series and there were other more reasonable videos that I thought I should make first. But screw being reasonable, I want a castle. I had a lot of big ideas for this project, but I had no idea where to start. I knew I wanted it to be sitting on a jagged cliff, so to start building that form, I just glued down some trash. I didn't really have a plan for the shape of the cliff, I kind of just let the garbage guide me, as I so often do. But I knew that I would be building off of it, so I wanted to try and keep it at a reasonable scale. Looking back, I don't know why I thought this was a reasonable scale. This thing is already massive. I'm using mostly wood glue here, but to attach the XPS foam bits to each other, I'm using spray foam. This is my first time using spray foam, and it has a lot of pros and cons. The main pro is that once it's cured, it basically fuses two pieces of foam together and creates a really strong bond. The second pro is that it has a bit of a working time, so you can move things around a bit. And finally, it gets points for being whimsical and fun to use. The main con is that it is so sticky. You absolutely have to use gloves while working with it. I tried to use gloves every single time I was using it, but inevitably I would stop using it, take off the gloves, and then I would touch a bit of the uncured foam by mistake, and it would get on my hands, and it would be so sticky, and it's just impossible to get off. It is maybe one of the most annoying materials I've ever worked with. Will use again. This whole process is basically sculpt sketching. I'm adding stuff, I'm taking stuff away, I'm carving stuff down. Some of the buildings that I've glued in, I will replace with more refined versions of later. I'm basically finding the vision as I go, and I am having a blast. For those of you who don't know, I daylight as an oil painter and I am coming off a month of back-to-back commissions. In the last couple of years, I have greatly reduced the amount of commissions that I take because they really take a toll on me. This past month of commissions kind of drained the life out of me, and as soon as I started working on this project, I felt 1000% better. My partner described it as the light returning to my eyes. When I was in art school, I chose to major in painting because I thought it would be easier to make it as an artist if I was a painter rather than, let's say, a sculptor. I think one of my best pieces of advice for young artists is if you're going to try and make it as an artist, try and make it in the medium that you love. Because if you don't enjoy the work, then what's the point? I liked painting, but I definitely didn't love it. So working as a painter for several years, I had all the downsides of being an artist while still being creatively unfulfilled. The difference between working on a painting and working on something like this is night and day. Every day I wake up excited to work on this project. To be fair, when I was in art school, they didn't have a major in Goblin arts, but I think they should. Once I had built up the cliff structure, I realized how underwhelming it was. One of my biggest weaknesses as an artist is not pushing ideas far enough. This maybe comes from my traditional art background, but my natural inclination is for balance and realism, but balance often makes for boring design. A completely balanced piece often lacks character, and whimsy is built on unbalanced, and I want this piece to be as whimsical as possible. Looking at the cliff, it looks like a realistic rock formation. It looks like a castle could definitely sit on top of it, and that's a huge problem. This castle is not allowed to make sense, so I carved it until it was a more unreasonable shape. Once I was happy with the cliff shape, it was time to start building the castle structure. But building a castle is such an abstract and daunting task, it's difficult to know where to start. So I started with a feature I knew I wanted the castle to have, a classic gate with a face carved into it. You know I had to. And as much as I want to start sculpting that gate face, I'm gonna save that for another video. The gate needs to go somewhere, so I built out a ruined bridge structure. This in hindsight was maybe the perfect place to start. Not only did it show me the entrance to the castle, it showed me where the front of the castle would be, and it kind of gave me a ground level to build up from. In building the base form cliff structure, a few buildings began to naturally emerge, so I built those into proper building shapes with some cardboard. This process was incredibly organic. Because I didn't really have a plan going into this build, I felt like I was building my castle on top of a naturally forming cliff, which turned out to feel incredibly immersive in a way I didn't expect. While I keep building, let's talk a little bit about the lore of this castle. This castle, like a lot of other structures that I reference in my miniatures, was built before the Great Goblin era in the world before. I imagine it was once the home of a powerful wizard, but that history is lost to time. As much as goblins are chaotic and free, they love to be minions. More often than not, when you see goblins in media, they are serving some sort of dark wizard. It's kind of their thing. So in order to create a dark wizard for the goblins to serve, my partner, the architect of Goblins, came up with this idea. Goblins in this world are kind of like kids playing pretend, so when they came across a castle that was once home to a dark wizard, one of the goblins simply said, "I am the dark wizard," all the others agreed and started serving him. If you're new here, the magic in Goblins is centered around belief. If a goblin believes they are the hero of legend, then all the magic in the world will react as if that is the truth. If a bunch of goblins believe that one goblin is the dark wizard, then they are. The Dark Goblin Wizard will also probably take on the appearance of wizards that they've seen in tapestries or paintings left behind from the old world. They will get taller and lanky, probably grow a beard, maybe even age dramatically. Perhaps this was once a normal castle, but because it's housed the Dark Goblin Wizard, it's become this melted, twisted form that we will eventually see. I've gone back and forth a lot between, oh, this really looks like something, to, what the hell is this big pile of garbage? But I do think it's starting to look like something. You just have to believe. Some of the buildings I placed just to see if the future silhouette would work, but I didn't glue them down, because once I had the base structure, it was time to focus more on playability. I need to know how the minis are going to go from one level to the other before I really start refining the buildings. I started making platforms and stairs that could wrap around the different building shapes. This requires a lot more measuring and thinking, but I'm still having a great time carving up foam. Don't look at my floor. This is actually the cleanest it's been in a couple weeks. Unfortunately, I used up all the foam I had lying around, but it's not cold anymore, so I can sacrifice this foam that I was using for insulation. I am so happy with these different levels. One of the things I'm most happy about is that these playability features are actually adding back into the aesthetic that I'm going for. These twisted, dangerous staircases really add to the dark castle vibe. I forgot to film this, but in carving away some of the original cliff structure, the boxes that I used as a foundation kind of created a cave-like shape. This was a total happy accident that I'm absolutely going to use. I filled the boxes with tinfoil to create a more cave-like shape, and I'm going to use this as a kind of subterranean level. I knew from the start that I wanted this castle to have a secondary secret entrance, like in Lord of the Rings when they climb the stairs and go into Shelob's cave, and this is perfect for that. I think instead of steep stone stairs, I'm going to create a rickety wooden staircase like the path the dwarves take in the Witcher Dragon episode. I still plan on making some Mordheim-style ruined towers and buildings on the upper levels, and I think the tallest tower will have to have a wrap-around spiral staircase leading up. If you have any critiques, feedback, or things you think I should add to this castle, please let me know. I'm still very much in the early stages of this build, and I think with your help, we can make something really awesome. For the aesthetics of this build, besides the kind of drippy texture, I want this thing to have so many gargoyles and as many faces carved into the facade as possible. I want most of the elements to be hand sculpted, but for things like windows, doors, railings, gates, maybe a couple stairs, I'm going to do some 3D printing. It's finally warm enough to set up my 3D printer in my shed, so if you have ideas for 3D prints that you think would help this build, please let me know. I think instead of sculpting the rocks, I'm going to be using plaster rock molds, Zorbazorb style. So it might look like a big pile of trash right now, but I hope you can see the vision and the potential in this truly epic build. I will be releasing a part 2 very soon, so if you want to see that, make sure you're subscribed. It really helps me out. A lot of exciting things are happening in the next couple of weeks. As I am editing this video, I am working on terrain for a big D&D game that I am running this weekend. Conjured Craft is coming to visit me, so I'll probably force them to work on this castle with me. And I'm going to the UK in June, where I will see some real castles. If you like this video, consider sharing it with a friend. It would really help me out. And if you want to help support this project and others like it, you can join me over on Patreon. Joining at any tier helps me afford the materials to create giant, stupid projects like this. Stay tuned for more Goblins videos coming very soon. It's Goblin Summer, baby. I'll see you next time. Bye!